Okay, if we talk about Conor, last couple of years he's not hungry. And now what happened with his legs, like never ever. Never people come back and never gonna be people on the same prime twice. Prime come only one time. You're gonna be on prime. After that, you're gonna go down.
Money and fame show who you are. That's what Khabib said after UFC 229. Most fans heard judgment, but years later it reads more like a diagnosis. Because Khabib didn't just beat Conor McGregor that night, he made the world watch Conor without the illusion. No perfect prediction, no clean knockout, no crowd-bending moment where the noise became part of his weapon, just pressure, resistance, frustration, consequence. And once that illusion cracked, everything that came after started to feel connected. The losses, the promises, the comebacks that never quite became comebacks. The version of Conor who was still famous enough to stop the sport, but no longer disciplined enough to rule it. Khabib saw the split before the rest of us did. If you respect deeper UFC stories, not just highlight reels, like the video and subscribe, because Khabib saw something in Conor that most fans didn't want to admit yet.
What do you think Conor McGregor is missing in his life? What do you think it is, man?
When you become rich, when you become famous, some people they lose real people around him, because real people who love you, they gonna tell you true. But fake people, they always say, oh, you good, you good, you good. You know, it's like they never say to you nothing, because they don't want to upset you, because they know they're gonna lose this comfortable zone. But real people, they don't care about this. They was with you before you become famous and rich, and they don't care about your money, they don't care about your fame. They just love you. And when they say to you true, you don't like this because of your ego, you know. And I think he lost a lot of people around him.
Yeah,
it's just my opinion. I don't think he have like people who was with him before when he became champion. And everybody needs someone who remind you, hey, you're doing this, this is bad, this is good, this is bad.
Before Conor became a warning story, he was proof that obsession could bend reality. People skip that part now because the ending got messy. They remember the whiskey, the arrests, the comebacks that never quite landed. But before all of that, there was a skinny Irish southpaw walking into rooms like he'd already seen the future, talking about things that sounded ridiculous until they started happening exactly the way he said they would. He didn't arrive in the UFC as a celebrity, he arrived as a problem. Already a two-division Cage Warriors champion, carrying himself like the UFC belt wasn't a dream. It was paperwork the company just hadn't processed yet. The first time most American fans saw him, he didn't look like another European prospect hoping to survive. He looked like a man who'd been waiting for the world to catch up. And then the sport started learning the difference between talking and knowing. He said he'd take over. He took over. He said he'd become champion. He became champion. He said Jose Aldo would overextend, that emotion would pull him into danger, that the left hand would be waiting. People laughed because Aldo hadn't lost in 10 years. Then 13 seconds passed, and suddenly the loudest man in the room looked less like a salesman and more like someone reading from a script nobody else had been allowed to see. That's why Conor mattered. Not because he talked plenty of fighters talk. Not because he was flashy, plenty of fighters chase attention. Conor mattered because for a while, the talk and the truth kept meeting in the same place. The prediction and the punch arrived together. And when that happens in combat sports, people don't just watch a fighter, they start watching a phenomenon. Eddie Alvarez was supposed to be the bigger man, the stronger champion, the veteran who dragged Conor into a different kind of fight. But at Madison Square Garden, under the brightest lights the UFC had ever wrapped around one man, Conor didn't look overwhelmed by the moment. He looked bored by everyone's doubts. He dropped Alvarez once, then again, then again. And by the time it was over, Conor McGregor stood in New York with 2 UFC belts, the first man in company history to hold titles in 2 divisions at once. That's the version Khabib would eventually meet. Not just a famous fighter, a man who'd taught millions of people to doubt their own doubts, a man who'd made arrogance look like accuracy. Here's the thing everyone missed before UFC 229. Conor had trained the world to interpret everything he did as strategy. If he interrupted someone, it was mental warfare. If he crossed a line, it was promotion. If he seemed too angry, too rich, too distracted, people found a way to explain it that still protected the myth. The assumption was that Conor wasn't reckless. He was theatrical. He wasn't unraveling. He was selling. And for a long time, that wasn't unreasonable. This was the same man who'd looked at Jose Aldo, seen the emotion building for months, and turned that emotion into a 13-second opening. He'd made pressure feel like his natural environment, like other men carried pressure, and Conor fed on it. So when the Khabib rivalry turned ugly, the bus attack, the personal insults, the lines that kept getting darker, a lot of people still saw it through the same lens. Conor's in control. Conor's always in control. Every explanation in the world except the real one. Because across from him was not another opponent who needed to be pulled into emotion. Khabib Nurmagomedov was built out of different material. He didn't need the room, he didn't need the microphone, he didn't need the crowd to laugh at the right moment, or the cameras to catch the perfect line. His power came from repetition, the same steps taken every day, until they became identity, father, faith, wrestling, pressure, silence. Khabib wasn't a saint, and that matters. He had pride. He had anger. He had a code that could turn hard when someone violated it. But that was the difference. Conor performed chaos like it was a weapon. Khabib carried restraint like it was armor. And Khabib didn't see Conor's performance as genius. He saw it as weakness, dressed up as control. He saw a man who'd become so good at selling the storm that maybe even Conor could no longer tell where the act ended. That was dangerous, because the whole McGregor machine was built on the idea that Conor could walk to the edge and come back whenever he wanted. Say anything, ignite anything, and then when the cage door closed, the chaos would sharpen into violence. But Khabib wasn't walking into that cage to participate in the show. He was walking in to end the argument. And then the act stopped working. Not all at once. It happened round by round, exchange by exchange. Every time Conor reached for one of the old tools and found out they didn't carry the same weight against this man. Khabib didn't fight like someone trying to win a press conference. He fought like a man taking back every inch of space Conor had occupied for months. Hands locked, hips heavy, head buried under the chin. Every second on the fence made the room feel smaller. Every scramble reminded Conor that this was no longer about who could control the story. It was about who could control the body. Then came the moment that should have changed how everyone understood this fight. Khabib the grappler, the mauler from Dagestan, the man everyone said had to avoid the striking exchanges, stepped forward and dropped Conor with a right hand, put it right on his chin. Not enough to finish the fight, but enough to make the illusion shatter in front of 20,000 people. From there, the fight became something colder than domination. Khabib talked to him, pressed him, made him defend, reset, carry weight, and solve problems that didn't go away when the round ended. Conor had been in hard fights before. Diaz had dragged him into deep water. Mayweather had taken him into a different world. But this was different because Khabib wasn't trying to survive the McGregor storm. He was proving the storm had limits. Fourth round. Back taken. Choke locked. Tap. For the first time in Conor's UFC career, his words hadn't created control. They'd created consequence.
When I watched you fighting Conor, I felt like you were fighting for your country, for your last name, for your father. When you beat him at the end, you were not letting go. You didn't seem too relaxed. You know what I'm saying? You seemed like you wanted to keep going, like you really wanted to hurt him. What was different about the fight with Conor than all the other fights?
On this fight, I was very relaxed. But when fight, no, I'm honest. I was controlling myself since when we're beginning everything. Press conference, this way and everything. I was controlling myself. Yeah, end of the fight, it was too much.
You lost a little control.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
because I'm human too. Everybody make mistake, you know. But this fight, this choke, it was not mistake. It was my plan. Make him tired and choke him out. This is what I told them. I'm gonna bring you to the deep ocean.
When you look back at your UFC legacy and all the good things you did, you had that one incident happen. Remember when you obviously fought McGregor? And you jumped over the fence and you dove into where all the fans were. What are you, not anything against, but were you proud of that moment? Is that something that you look back at and you regret doing?
I'm not gonna say I'm proud or something like this. Maybe on this age right now, right now 33 and a half. Maybe I'm not gonna jump right now, but for that time.
So
I think it was epic. That's like MMA history.
That was
now.
so
like,
epic.
I think,
yeah.
But what was in your thing? Take us through if you don't mind. Like you're there, you just choked out Conor, right? And so did you hear something? Did somebody say something to you? What made you go from jumping on the thing to going after somebody?
No, first of all, like I was preparing for war, you know. I come inside the cage, I fight with this guy, and he tap. I'm like, why I come here? Why I train so hard for this? Like you're gonna tap like easy like this, you know? I just take his chin, you know. It's like he tap. Like this one make me upset too, you know, because I accept more than what I find inside the cage. I expect more. And then after what happened, honestly, I don't remember everything. Honestly, I'm gonna be honest. I remember like someone from his like corner say something, like, and it was like crazy emotional moment for me. You know?
After Khabib, there was still one night where people could pretend the old Conor never left. Donald Cerrone. 40 seconds. Shoulder strikes in the clinch, head kick, finish. The Irish flag. The walk around the cage like everything had been restored. And for a moment, everyone remembered why they'd waited. But Cowboy didn't answer the deeper questions. He didn't test whether Conor could still handle 5 rounds of elite pressure, whether the discipline was back, whether the hunger had survived the money. Cowboy wasn't the comeback. He was the last flash. Dustin Poirier was the real test. And that's where Khabib's words started aging differently. The rematch at UFC 257 looked competitive early. Conor landed clean. He had moments where the left hand still looked dangerous enough to make you remember the old version. But Dustin wasn't fighting the memory. He was fighting the man in front of him. And the man in front of him was heavier on his feet, less fluid, less ghost-like than the version who used to slide in and out of danger like he had an extra second nobody else was given. Then the calf kicks started landing. Small, ugly, practical weapons that didn't care about aura. They took away Conor's base, one strike at a time. Changed how he stood, changed how he threw. A fighter like Conor doesn't just punch with his left hand, he punches with distance, balance, timing, and the threat of exits. Dustin didn't just attack the leg, he attacked the system. And when the leg stopped answering, the old magic had nowhere to go. Second round TKO. For the first time in Conor's MMA career, he'd been stopped by strikes. Not by a grappler pulling him into foreign territory, by a guy he'd already knocked out, a guy who made adjustments, stayed calm, and took away the foundation. That's not just a result. That's a symbol. The trilogy at UFC 264 ended with Conor's leg breaking at the end of the first round. Him sitting against the fence, the fight over, still talking, still selling, still trying to control the camera even when he couldn't stand. That image made Khabib's, quote, land with more weight than the night he first said it. And here's what keeps this from being a simple Khabib victory lap. Years later, Conor himself admitted that fighting and promoting at the highest level was draining in a way most people never understood. He said it almost broke him. Then he went further. Maybe it did break him. That line matters, because the easy story is that Khabib was disciplined and Conor wasn't. Khabib stayed true, Conor sold out, and everyone got what they deserved. But real fighting stories are never that clean. Conor wasn't destroyed by one loss. He was stretched across 2 lives. One life was the fighter timing, range, repetition, film study, hunger, the terrifying privacy of preparation. The man who made predictions because he'd done the work to see them before anyone else could. The other life was the empire, the whiskey, the cameras, the obligations, the businesses, the constant need to be not just Conor McGregor the fighter, but Conor McGregor the event. Every fight had to be sold like a global referendum on who he was. For a while, those 2 lives moved together. Then, they started pulling in opposite directions. That's what Khabib understood before anyone wanted to say it. The problem wasn't fame itself. Fame was part of Conor's gift. The problem was that fame changed what got rewarded. The performance outside the cage became as profitable as the performance inside it. Maybe more. The character no longer served the fighter. The fighter had to serve the character. And that's a trade you don't come back from. Khabib didn't destroy Conor McGregor's legacy. That's too simple. One loss can't erase Aldo in 13 seconds. One loss can't erase the double champion moment at Madison Square Garden. One loss can't erase the way Conor forced an entire sport to rethink what a fighter could be worth. He changed the business. He changed the entrances, the press conferences, the way fighters talked about money, leverage, and ownership. Before Conor, most fighters were trying to climb the rankings. After Conor, More of them started trying to build a brand strong enough to bend the rankings around them. That legacy is real, and that's exactly why the fall hit so hard. Because Khabib didn't need to erase Conor to change how people saw him. He did something more permanent. He gave the audience a different lens. After UFC 229, every Conor moment started carrying a second meaning. Every comeback rumor, every training clip, every promise that he was focused again. The question was no longer, can Conor win? It became, how much of the old Conor is still in there? For years, Conor had made people believe before the evidence arrived. He'd say the impossible thing, then walk into the cage and make it look obvious. But after Khabib, the direction flipped. The belief started needing evidence first. Fans still watched. They still cared. They still argued. But the faith had conditions now. And once people have seen the split between the character and the man, they can't unsee it. And that's the cruelest part. Every time Conor walked back toward the cage, he wasn't only fighting the man across from him. He was fighting the memory of himself, the kid who spoke his future into existence, the featherweight assassin who made timing feel like destiny, the lightweight champion who stood in MSG with 2 belts and looked like the sport had finally caught up to the movie playing in his head. That ghost might have been the hardest opponent he ever faced. Khabib didn't take Conor McGregor's legacy. He made the world watch Conor carry it. And carrying it might have been the harder thing. If this changed how you see Conor's fall, like the video and subscribe for more deep UFC stories. And click the video on your screen right now because that story is about another fighter whose legacy changed before the world realized it.